if I could finish the statement, traditionally speaking, or we traditionally did this or that, it would be around holidays for sure.
Okay. So now, in itself, that's a powerful thing when you start talking about, what's up, Asia? About to make some salad dressing with your salad. And our sister, Mama Power Foods, is a vendor here at Oyun Marketplace. Is that the right word, a vendor?
Consignment? No, she just has her product here.
True. Yeah, blessed love, Yasa Safari. The man who said maroon with the golden spoon. We're talking about traditions, and this is an interactive, so if y'all have something on your mind, write it in the comments. But Queen Yenn is just starting to tell us about some of the memorable traditions in her family. And you said a powerful one, the revival, or the Saturday before revival, y'all would get together and wash each other's feet. I mean, that in itself is a whole show.
Yeah.
Because that's something special to that. Why were y'all washing each other's feet?
Well, at the time, I don't think anybody really explained it to me. I think it was scriptural, Now, if I think in retrospect now, it's a part of that. Again, it was right before we took communion. So in my understanding, when you take your shoes off or wash the feet, it's two things. Somebody can see that as humbling yourself to your neighbor, but it's also lowering yourself in general, period. Lowering yourself whenever you take off your shoes or wash your feet, or, you're a Muslim brother. When you do wudu, you're presenting yourself empty or clean or, pure. And so it was a level of purification prior to the communion,
Right. And you said lowering yourself, and that's deep, because you're also hiring, you're also
by becoming small, yourself. You become great.
One of the scriptures say, "Who humble himself exalt himself. Who humble himself should be exalted. Who exalt himself should be humble." So and that's beautiful. I have my grandson with me today, and one of the things that I've come to know as a tradition in our family, and really passing on to him, is the same washing of the feet. The same washing of the feet, and it's really a beautiful thing when you practice that. You can say humility. The word that comes to my mind is that deep love, because I think about some of the people who have been presented to us through the years as prophets and great spiritual examples and everything, and how they would wash the feet of their disciples, and just to show again that the word humility is something I'm kind of funny about these days, because I know the etymology of it.
I'm funny about all words. No.
Right? Well, you know what I mean when I say
definitely.
So
it's a duality. So I think acknowledging the surface level, for the lack of better words, meaning, it has its value. Yes. But the deeper meaning of, humbling, a lot of people have a hard time doing that, humbling yourself, because you for a long time felt like you were the one that had to control life, that had to make the effort, that had to. And so when you lower yourself and allow a higher power, as some would call it, or God force within you, as some would call it, or divinity, to take the seat, the wheel, the front seat, become number one, then, that's true humbling. And it's scary, and it's courageous, and it's sometimes create a level of fire in your life, but that fire purifies.
Yeah, beautiful. We're talking to Queen Yenn of Oyun Ministries, and we're talking about traditions. So you mentioned the holidays, and one of the things there's two things I wanted to speak with you about today, and to get your take on, if we can unpack those things. One is, again, about the whole aspect of creating new traditions. That seems like something that is still, to the average person, like, what? Create new tradition? Like, I can do that? It almost seems to me, my sense is that when people hear that, even when it's not stuffed down their throat, like, but said with a loving word, it just seems to be, well, I didn't know I had the power to do that. So we really want to unpack that. And then the other thing is, especially with the holidays, a lot of these holidays that are celebrated in the West have been established around certain energy vortices, you know. When I think of Christmas, for instance, we are, you know, the birth of Christ. We're not necessarily talking about a human being at all. We're talking about the birth of the sun. You know, the winter solstice, which has proven itself to be one of the most impactful times of the whole 12-month, 13-month, whatever, you know, calendar you observe, the whole cycle of that whole annual cycle, because this is a time when it's the darkest, and coming out of the cave, you know, just like a seed germinates, you know, there's a lot of science to it. So many holidays have been created around these energy vortices, and as we know, especially as people who start to study and get knowledge of ourselves, we often end up with a disdain and anger, or being lied to, or being hoodwinked when we find out some of the surface things that the Europeans who created these holidays around these vortices were really into. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so what I want to do today is take it a step further, because after we are aware of the bamboozlement, or if that's a word, we can also dig deeper and see, well, what is the energy around this? You know, like cities, many of the major cities in America, we can look at Washington, D.C. as the head of the empire and all that, which it is, but also Benjamin Banneker designed a city in an energy vortex that when you study that, it would make perfect sense why it's become a very powerful city, and you know what I mean? And Correct. So on and so forth.
Correct.
So let's just start with the whole concept of creating new traditions. What brought that? I'm curious, because I heard you say it. Why were you inspired? What brought that to your mind? That whole concept of creating new traditions.
I think it's more of refining the traditions that we already have. Mm-hmm. It's more so like, you know, I was doing some self-reflection, some deep level self-work one time, and I got to the place where I felt like I came to a realization that a lot of the things I was finding my hands to do was because of ego. It was because of something, and it wasn't bad. They were all great things, right. But it still wasn't spirit-led or in alignment with my divine path or my divine guidance for me in my life. And so I got to the place where I was like, dang, do I just need to do it? Should I just stop doing everything that I'm doing? You know, throw it all away? And then, Spirit clearly said to me, no, just, get it in alignment, mm-hmm. Bring a balance to it. Bring it up to God level, basically. Mm-hmm. That's the words that I'm using for myself. Mm-hmm. Bring it to God level, because nothing is by chance. You're finding yourself doing these things not by mistake. Nothing is by chance. So bring it up to God level, seek guidance. Why is this in my life? Why am I doing this? What is it meant for? And you don't always have to know the why and how. It's also the guidance can be still, mm-hmm. Be still, and so that you can be clear. Mm-hmm. And so I think the same for the holidays. These dates, we can look at the imbalance of them all. We can choose. That's the power of the beautiful blessing of being a spiritual being, having a human experience. The power of being a human is we can choose. We mm-hmm. have mind. We can choose.
It's a free will.
It's a free will. So we can choose to focus on what we can consider to be negative. Mm-hmm. Or we can ask ourselves, do we want to just remove it from our life? Mm-hmm. Or we can focus on the good or the God, as I would say, in it. What's the positive in it? And if you really study the astrological or cosmic energy around the holidays, there is always good in it. It is some good in it. Now, you may say, well, there's no good in Thanksgiving. And you don't have to go too deep. You don't have to get cosmic or astrological to know that the good that clearly has come of Thanksgiving, especially in the melanated community, is out of no other time, family is going to gather during Thanksgiving. Now, something that I was introduced to by Mama Marimba was fasting. You know, maybe do a certain fast or do a certain prayer or something like that to honor those people that, you know, may not look at this holiday as something that they are celebrating, you know, to honor that, if that's in your spirit to do. You're not required to do that. You know, you're really not required to do that. And I'm, you know, I have my own opinion about it and my own practices about it, but I always say, follow your own spirit. If spirit put it in you to honor them, but don't feel required to do so just because, you know, that is their reality. You know, you have to, I think what I'm proposing is for the traditions that we do have, if there are traditions that may have a root that's not so great in someone else's life or in someone else's world, then refine them for you. Thanksgiving for me, when my mother transitioned, everything changed. I unapologetically celebrate all of them. Like, I'm unapologetically celebrating. The only one I just don't celebrate is 4th of July. Like, and these are ones that I don't even think about. I forget that until I go to the bank and, you know, the door is closed. And I'm like, oh, it's 4th of July. But like Christmas, Thanksgiving, Mother's Day, Easter, all of them, I'm thinking about my mama. You know, I get dressed up just because I know my mama will be like floored to see me dressed up for Easter. I'm gonna dress up for it because she celebrated Easter. I'm not gonna be concerned about, well, why she didn't know that Easter was the Ishtar, and then I'm not going through all of that. I've refined it to where Easter now is a celebration between me and my mother, and I also know the metaphysical meaning of Easter that has an extreme significance to it that we could use for our benefit if we know, you know, lack of knowledge man perish, and, you know, knowledge of self will liberate you. And so knowing what it is, I can celebrate it for that, for myself, and then also knowing that my mother loved Easter. She loved to dress up. She loved to get off. She loved hats. She had all of that. I'll do that just as a celebration of her to honor her as an ancestor. True. So, you know, that's a long way around saying, you know, the refinement of all that you do, including the traditions, make it something for you. I think more so on the show last week when I interviewed you all, I was more so in my mind thinking that taking these times per year that everybody kind of is used to and people have time off and all of those different type of things to be a little bit more intentional is what I was really thinking, like wanted to emphasize. Absolutely. Be a little bit more intentional. You know that everybody is off, you know, so throw away focusing on, you know, what somebody else did that was wicked. Throw that away. You now have your family. You have this time. You got the greatest cooks in your family doing it. Not the so great cooks, but you know, it is what it is. But everybody cooking. You got food. You got family. You got music. You got good times. You got chill spirits, prayerfully, you know. You even got the duality of it, right? The struggle, the strife, the whatever, you know, when family get together, oh Lord, you know. But that's a prime time. That's a vortex in itself. Absolutely. That's an opportunity. Absolutely. Yeah, why would we waste that, you know? So
that's almost like both of those rivers that we're talking about meeting, converging, because that's an old tradition. And as you said, reworking them, rewiring them, if you will, repurposing them, and then also creating new traditions. Because in my mind, when I think of even before we go to holidays, I think of the Million Man March. I think of all these different times when the whole world's energy is focused on one thing, and how ripe and how fertile that ground is to create a cosmic or a quantum leap in our consciousness, in our reality. You know what I mean? Because as you know, as you teach, we all have that power, even individually. So if we got all this power together, harnessing that power. Correct. On any day, on any time, at any moment. You know, I mean, imagine what can happen. Imagine what can...
Well, I'm glad you said that about traditions and... He's still sad. He was in timeout. You taking him out of timeout?
Oh, no.
He was doing very well in timeout. You did really good in timeout. Okay? Really good. You did real good.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about a time.
You clearly just did. We real life right here, y'all. Real life right here.
I didn't know he was in timeout, or I wouldn't.
Yes, I told him, now go sit. What you think? Now go sit down. It's timeout. See? Grandbobbers and bobbers.
Go ahead.
All right. No, he want to stand up now. He can, but he just got to behave.
Let me just let y'all know something. As you young bobbers and everything, you don't ever contradict what the mama say in front of the child. Even if you just don't do it. I mean, my baba never did it. My mama never did it.
You said you wanted him to be manager, and he was, and now you done.
I didn't know
stir back up.
No, he's good. But anyway,
he knew what he was in.
We're here talking about.
He knew that he was in. He did a good job.
He did.
I mean, he did a really good job. Some children don't go in time out good, so you did a really good job. So he learned the lesson. Good job. Good job. Good job. Excellent job.
How you doing?
Greetings. How are you?
Peace and blessing. Let us know if we can help you. We're just doing a little interview, but we're here with you. So this is WRG Atlanta, 89.3 on the FM dial.
What are you doing on there? What are you doing there?
What? Okay, remember, Asa, we're recording, so you gotta be quiet.
Okay. Say okay.
Okay.
All right.
Oh.
So yes, Queen Yenn, we were just you were saying you glad I said that.
Mm-hmm.
And,
well, you mentioned something that tradition is something that people typically do. This is something that it's very similar to almost like ritual. It's something that you do. The time cosmically, cosmically, when you're talking about this being what people call the Age of Aquarius, then also you have an eclipse season going on right now. And then you have every month you have a full moon. We have some planets in retrograde. And with those planets in retrograde, some of them, it's calling for refinement. Mm-hmm. The refinement of our traditions, the refinement of our belief systems, the refinement of how we go about life, the upheaval of those things that maybe we've been just stuck in because of our comfort zone. And we saw it really start to really pop off last year, mm-hmm. When the pandemic first popped off, mm-hmm. It sat everybody down. And then from that point on, even before then, I really talk about how the Venus retrograde in 2018 really started this.
It was.
But then, here 2020 comes, and now you can't ignore it. At this point, nobody can ignore it. Right. And so a lot of people have gone back to work, all of these like the outside, open back up again, all these kind of things. But let's not ignore those nudgings that, this ain't the same no more. I don't feel like this the same no more. And some people are going with that nudging, and they're kind of, I guess, for the lack of a better word, protesting people trying to stick them back in what used to be, because everything has changed so much. And people realize it was a lot of realization that happened. A lot of realization. I realized, that success is not the same as I thought it was, or I don't have to exert my energy in a certain way in order to be successful how I thought it was, or I can't depend on some of these structures that I thought I could depend on. And so it's not by happenstance that this is happening. This is a cosmic assignment that's going on. The assignment is refine, uproot, clear out, clean out, renew. That's what we're talking about. Renewing the traditions. Renew or rejuvenate.
So renew means bring new life into it.
Bring new life into it. And so
we're here now. We have the opportunity to be here with our family because in the context of United States of America, in the empire, this is a day that everybody has off for the most part. Mm-hmm. So now the question is, in terms of the courage that you said, you ready, sis? All right, take care of you. In terms of the courage you said, how do we now raise or take advantage of the opportunity to create something new? now that we're all gathered and all together? I mean, I guess that's the $1 million question. And many people have done it, over the years. Many people have some personal testimonies about how they've done that with their families. Mm-hmm. And when we come back from the break, I want to just talk a little bit more about that with you.
The how.
You're tuned to WRFG Atlanta, 89.3 on the FM dial. Those of y'all joining us on Instagram and Facebook, welcome to the OU Marketplace. Queen Yenn, while we're taking a break, let them know what you got in store at the OU Marketplace. What some of the seasonal items are and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So in OU Marketplace, you want to say what? You can get it out of there. In OU Marketplace, I have available wellness items, holistic wellness items, including but not limited to a variety of smudge bundles, candles, incense, raw and charged gemstones, natural oils, natural teas, natural tinctures, natural toothpaste, natural mouthwash, soaps, lotions, shea butter creams, all those different type of things. It's also other consigners in the store as well. So alongside that, I have some custom made journals. They're super dope. I have a sister, as a matter of fact, this is one of her creations. I have a sister in here, her products. She has jewelry, gemstone jewelry. Let's see, my other consignor. Shout out to all of my consigners, by the way, just in case they end up seeing this. I have a consignor who has different teas, and she has some different garments. And is that all my consigners? I have a consignor that has shea butter, one that has yoni steams and moon oils and coffee scrubs. So
where is this on
herbal oils. So it's just basically a space where I try to keep products in stock that can support your self-care, that can support your holistic wellness. And it's a nice vibe. So as you come in, it's just a nice vibe. We're open on Wednesdays 11 to 4, and then now Thursdays 11 to 4, and then Saturdays 11 to 6. And when you come in, you also have available boiled peanuts, some other goodies, drinks. You got the fresh produce outside. And so the OU Marketplace was inspired by, I'm the founder of OU Ministries, and a part of OU Ministries is our services like energy clearings, tarot readings, wellness coaching, spiritual wellness coaching, business coaching, the spiritual side of business, those type of things. And so during the coaching or even the clearings or readings, it may come up, hey, you need to cleanse a little bit more. Hey, you need some protective stones. Oh, you need to, clean up your health. And so I just thought I was inspired to create a marketplace where you can find some of those quality things. So everything that I choose to have in the marketplace is quality and is for full wellness. And so, that is OU Marketplace. Yeah, new hours, you know what I'm saying? We try. And potentially we'll have one more day, but right now we did add a day. Wednesdays 11 to 4, Thursdays 11 to 4, and then Saturdays 11 to 6. Potentially we will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but we'll definitely, if you stay tuned, we'll let you know if we do that. So come through. The address is 3353 Washington Road, East Point, Georgia. Not far from Camp Creek. It doesn't matter. Usually we, in the spring and summer, we have meditations on Saturdays.
Thank you. Yes,
Have he that's he eating?
Yeah.
He's saying these things up. Hold on, is it here?
He had a whole couple of apples, he had pancakes and fudge.
Oh, he had some pancakes? Oh yeah, you done ate, huh?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a blessed one, sis.
So he ate real good. There you go. Thank you. There you go.
All right.
Okay, I was stalling, Sean. I tried.
We appreciate you. All right. Yeah, new hours, Asia. Yes, we're tuned to the Ancestral Rock on your station for progressive information and handpicked quality music. We're here at the Shamba, cultivating ground, where we cultivate the soil and the soul, the home of Oyun Ministries and On the Farm. Oyun Ministries is the ministry that Queen Yenn, our special guest today, has created. And those of you who are loyal listeners to our program on WRFG are very privy to that. You know, she's been around for years, giving us, she always would come and give us the new moon and the full moon energy report. And, you know, and speak about gemstones and living with the seasons and all kind of powerful vibrations. And On the Farm is urban empowerment professionals, you know, who specialize in helping people to realize their gift of abundance, the gift that we've been given naturally, and now have the opportunity to manifest that with gardens, realizing that also that some of those principles, those fundamental principles that are inherent in agriculture, inherent in human life. So here we are on WRFG, and we've been talking to Queen Yenn about the converging of two rivers, old traditions, which we have established. And I invite you all, don't take anything anybody say, we just verbatim, you know, and just take it as the law. You know, take it with a grain of salt and do your research. This is the information age, right? This is the age of Aquarius, as Queen Yenn was talking about. That means to know. Aquarius represents knowledge, you know, and many other things, but that's one of the representations of the age of Aquarius. This is the age of knowledge. So there's nothing hidden again, you know, under the sun. The Buddha said that there's three things that can never be hidden for long. That's the sun, the moon, and the truth. Real talk, right? So here we are. So I'm saying all that to say we know that a lot of these traditions, a lot of the holidays, especially the winter holidays, and even as Queen Yenn mentioned, springtime, Easter, and all those, were established around certain energy vortices, special times in creation, special universal alignments. And so that's what the Pope of Rome, and many of these came from Rome, and many other maybe European sources, they were aware of these because they came to study at the feet of our mothers and fathers, right? And then they went and perverted them. So what we're talking about now, just to bring the conversation up to date for those of y'all who just joining, is we about not throwing away the baby with the bathwater, but using the original energy as intended by the Creator, and repurposing it back for our liberation, for our joy, for our peace, and for our power. And a lot of that is really centered around familyhood. So give thanks, Queen Yenn, for what you brought to the table so far, literally and figuratively, because we're here at the Shamba, and we are lunching and learning. You know, this is a segment called Tasty Knowledge. But now I want to talk about the how. You know, and maybe you can share from some of your experience. I know that a lot of people of our generation, you know, what we considered younger people in this moment in time, 30s and 40s, we have the elders as well as the youth on our shoulders, so to speak. And I don't say on our shoulders as a burden, right? But we have that responsibility. You know, the elders our parents are getting up in age, and so there's a natural propensity to take care of them in a deeper way, in a more consistent way, in a more present way. And then, of course, our children. So how does the person who sees an opportunity for the elevation of the energy use that time when the family is gathered to start that process without chasing everybody away and making them never want to come back again?
Well,
the $1 million question again.
Well, you know, where I'll start is just seeking divine guidance on what to do.
Right. Because
when you allow spirit to lead you, then all of those things you fear, like running them off or they're not listening or whatever, it balances. You know, Spirit gonna give you a way that is beautiful and divine.
That is palatable.
Absolutely.
Yes. Very important point.
And that's not to say that it won't cause some stirring up,
right. But
because Spirit is at work, it's still going to end out beautiful and divine. So, right. You can't be afraid of that. Because that fear, I want to talk a little bit more on that, because a lot of times we have something in our spirit like, man, I wish we could do this during Thanksgiving, or I wish we could, but what people gonna say, or what they gonna look at me like I'm crazy, or like I'm the black sheep, and blah 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 blah. That's ego. That's ego. That's when ego becomes a part of what Spirit done told you to do, then you will start to have that fear and start having that doubt. And so you don't necessarily push through that. You affirm, what the goals, the desired outcome you have. And so that's more than pushing through. That's more of handling it with that soft side, that soft nature of a spiritual core. You're coming from a spiritual core versus your ego, which definitely comes off harsh, and spiritual, because people think this, and that's why I'm emphasizing too, people can perceive it as, spiritual is just all fluffy and white. No, it can have fire, but that fire still, it's interesting. It comes off like that peace that surpasses all understanding. Like, how could we be in the fire? How could I be stirring this stuff up, but we still have peace? Well, sometimes it need to be stirred up. So I definitely would say consult Spirit if you're feeling like I'd like to be the conduit of some change when it comes to how we celebrate. How we celebrate transitions, how we celebrate Thanksgiving, how we celebrate Christmas. Or proposing a component added to it. Because again, you don't have to change everything around. It's just refining a little bit. But I would certainly say two things that immediately come to mind is, healing is always needed. Healing is always needed. So doing something that is healing. I have a couple of people who were asking me for the information to the sister that I use at my retreats for the sound bath. And they were saying that they'd like to treat their family to a sound bath for the holidays. Sure. And so that's one thing, that could be helpful.
So those are some real practical stuff. Keep them coming.
Yeah, I mean, you can also just do some journaling, do a meditation, at some point during the holidays. Again, anything that's kind of healing, especially if there's like some kind of like serious strife in the family, and they come together, hiding it or just trying to avoid the elephant in the room, it does nothing but keep the curse hat going, And so even if, if Spirit keeps putting on your heart, then you may have to be courageous enough to do something, and make it where, it's palatable, as you use, for the family. But Spirit will lead you on what to do. Before I would, on Thanksgiving, I would just like adamantly rebel and just fast. And then I realized my mom would be real blowed, not just because of the stand I was trying to take, but because she liked for me to eat her food. She cooked dressing, some vegan, as she would say, some vegan dressing and some vegan turnip greens. And here I am talking about I'm not eating because, She was looking at me like, girl.
I stayed up all night, first of all. That's first of all.
And so, it's like, okay, well, I introduced I introduced fasting. I said, well, here's the reason why I'm doing this. Would y'all be open to fasting up until, that time of day? And during that time, we say a prayer for those families who maybe feel some type of way about this and all of these type of things, or the history of why we know Thanksgiving. And they was willing, it was like, of course, that's something that, and that's something we practice fasting we as a family growing up, fasting for, at least for the church, my church, it was every Tuesday, I think I remember, from 6 to 6. So it wasn't something super foreign, so they were able to receive it. So it's like, just finding, again, starting with that, getting led by Spirit will give you the guidance. I could give different ways, but definitely starting with Spirit will, because your Spirit will lead you in a way that's in balance for your family.
Absolutely. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm hearing you talk, because it's very real. We all come from families who have a deep, and some people would say complicated, but just a history that really talks about that duality, that emphasizes that duality. We've all come through a lot. And so what you just mentioned for your family is so powerful, because you first started with a consultation of Spirit, you were guided in the right direction, what the appropriate medicine is, Right. It reminds me of the fact that on a whole different level, in terms of when you talk about medicine and how the Creator, how the universe provides us what we need. I learned years ago, and I've been repeating it ever since, and I can bear witness from my own personal experience, that if you live in a certain house for more than 3 years, the so-called weeds in the yard are going to be something that is directly responding to your bodily needs and needs of your family, because of the fact that urine and bodily waste has been deposited in that area. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, just think about that. Mm-hmm. So the same way, there's always something. The physician is always ready. The universal physician is always ready with a cure. Mm-hmm. But first of all, we got to start with, as you said earlier, humbling ourselves. Mm-hmm. That's why I think it was so significant in a multiplicity of ways. When the first tradition that you recall was about washing feet, because that's so much more than getting our hands, on our people's feet, But that's really about saying, in Lakesh, as they say, I see you. The divinity in me sees the divinity in you, and I see you. I see your life as something precious and worthy of my care. Beautiful. We're speaking with Queen Yenn, y'all, of Oyun Ministries. We're actually, for those of y'all joining us online, you can take a little background view of Oyun Ministries. We're here at 3353 Washington Road in East Point, Georgia, at a space called the Shamba Cultivating Ground, the home of Oyun Ministries and On the Farm. So Queen Yenn, let's get forward now. We're going to kind of go back and forth, but it's really not no separation line. It's almost like a dance between, the creating of the new traditions and the using of the older traditions. One thing that you have become very well known for in the city of Atlanta and beyond is really helping us to understand the lunar cycles and appropriate behavior around the lunar cycles. Now, specifically, tomorrow...
Optimal behavior.
Yeah, optimal, thank you, thank you. Appropriate was my word, but I definitely say optimal is a much better word, because...
Just because I like to help people get away from good, bad.
Right.
That judgment piece is big, absolutely. And it could have a really serious impact on your life when you always judging something. Right. Message. You should, this full moon, you shouldn't be doing it. It's like...
Yeah, I do my best not to use the word should. So, optimal, because now we're talking about free will again. Optimal gives us the chance to exercise our free will and just share with you what, if you want to get to the top of the mountain, here's how you go. So I wanted to talk about the full moon coming up for a moment. This is the autumn time. This is a time of reflection. One of the main, as a farmer myself, one of the huge benchmarks or next major time periods is going to be the Winter Solstice. We just hosted a retreat following weekend, which was just an incredible success in terms of living with the seasons and helping people to reflect on how the summer and the spring crop went, So by the Winter Solstice, as farmers, we have our whole year planned out. It's not just as farmers, but, there's definitely as a farmer, at taking the opportunity for those long nights and shorter days when it's usually cold and not much to do outside physically on the farm. When nature gives you that natural ability to say, okay, I can rest without feeling like I'm cheating the farm around me, I'm cutting corners, I can really rest, right? So let's talk about the full beaver moon coming up, and just what some of you have observed as optimal behaviors, optimal maybe rituals, anything that comes to your mind in terms of this full moon.
Well, if we look at one of the things that I like to highlight is that nature is one of our greatest reflections of the Creator. Our greatest reflection of God. Nature. If you want to see God's face, pay attention to nature. If you want to get God's guidance, pay attention to nature, because we're one with it. No matter if you're willing to accept what that really means or not, you are. So it is what it is. And that's what I always preface my new moon and full moon guidance videos with, is that, look, whether you want to pay attention to the moon or not, it impacts you. It's science, it just is what it is. We try to be stubborn. Oh, that sounds mystical and all this. Okay, well, if you don't understand it doesn't.
However you want to slice it. Don't mean that the sun ain't hot.
It just doesn't, so that's number one. So when you pay attention to it, and then you can get guidance. And when you get guidance, then you can begin to experience the harmony that comes naturally with the cycles and seasons of nature. You can start experiencing that. You can be at peace like the tree. You can be fruitful like the bird. You can have a great harvest like the crops, if you pay attention to it and flow with it. And so that is one of the things that inspired the new moon and full moon meditations. It's that it was a great help in my life. I began to do new moon journaling and then full moon releasing. And my life changed, and it was not just because of the moon energy. The moon energy was supporting those efforts. It was because I was taking the time to remember God, to remember self, to be with self, to release those things that I should have never been holding on to get out of the way of the Almighty. And so now, with that said, we're in the fall. If we look at nature, I'd love, we're on your social media page. I love for those on the social media to just infer from just what nature is showing us right now. What could be some of the lessons that we could take from nature and implement those things, or mimic or mirror those things in our very own lives for our emotional state, for our physical well-being? What could be some of those things? And I just ask you, what could be those something? Fall. What can the fall show us, teach us, that we can try to be like the tree, or try to be like the earth, or try to be like the weather, or try to be like whatever in nature in the fall? Because there's a significant change that happens once the fall equinox hits. So, Ross Kofi, I'm turning the mic on to you, over to you.
Yeah.
What would be some of the things that fall tells us?
You just threw me an alley-oop. Let's just start with the tree, as you said, being like the tree. The tree does not lose its energy, it loses vigor. The tree does not die. However, the leaves, it sheds its leaves, which have been connecting, or what's the word I want to use? Collecting information all year through the sun. These green, vibrant leaves, and they fall to the ground and they become gold. But they go through a process of decomposition, where the tree may not look in the same
like it's alive,
right? Way, So it might not be attractive to the bees and everything as it was when the flowers were on there in the springtime. But it's absolutely and it's also, by doing that process, by going through that process, it's creating literally gold for farmers. It's creating, so that energy, that experience, teach wisdom piece. That's what I see in that right there. Experience, teach wisdom, because that life experience of that leaf, or those leaves on that tree, has now transformed into something that will become a fertilizer for more trees and more vegetables.
So there's a lesson right there that can be highlighted in the fall. So you may take that lesson that's highlighted in the fall. This is a perception that, or something that you were able to connect with, that lesson, and then you build on that. You take that and you put that in your mind. Well, how is this applicable in my life? How is this reflected in my life? How can I respect that more in my life? How can I call that more into my life? How can I call wisdom? How can I honor and respect wisdom more so in my life? You know, what are the things that are decomposing in my life? How can I now look at those things that maybe I looked at as a bad thing before and see that they are decomposing really in my life? Right. You know, so one thing...
And they're transforming. Their energy
right.
transforming.
How can I perceive it as a transformation versus a loss?
A death and a loss.
Yes, precisely. So a lot of that thought process is happening during the fall. Yes. Well, it could be if you're, you know, if you tuned in. And sometimes when you're not tuned in, because you may see that if you track yourself, if you track your cycles in life, you possibly can see that, wow, during the fall, I tend to go through this kind of self-reflection phase, or during the spring, I tend to go through this type of phase. You just got to pay attention to yourself, be more aware, you know, that self-awareness. Yeah. But that's one thing during the fall. But we're talking about this full moon. So now we're in the fall. I started with the season. Now let's go to the moon phases. This is the layers of the energetic opportunities we have during the different seasons and cycles. So we're in the fall. Now we got these moon phases. We always have a new moon and full moon every month, you know? And so in the fall, you got about 3-4 months. You got about a quarter of new moons and full moons. New moons during the fall is going to give you the opportunity to plant seeds for those lessons that's being highlighted for you. And so maybe you may
plant seeds for the lesson. Talk about that, please.
So it's like, maybe you're not really tuning into wisdom because you too caught up in your mind. Your mind chatter is off the chain. So now I'm going to plant seeds to get this mind chatter together. Planting the seeds could be just seeing it, acknowledging it, and then making the intention or putting the desire out. And when I say out, I mean like maybe speaking it or writing. It's one in person, isn't it?
It's a cement mixer.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Smart guy.
I give a toy.
You got to have a toy? That's a cement mixer?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. So now you're planting those seeds to be able to lower the mind. Lower the mind. So that plant seeds could be, I'm going to make an intention to meditate every day. I'm going to make an intention.
Powerful thing you just mentioned, because usually when you talk about a lesson, and again, this is because of the miseducation, that we just look at it as a loss and anything but planting a seed, because planting a seed has this connotation of bringing new life. But you say, now let's transform that lesson and establish it as a tree, as a principle now that's going to grow with us forever.
That's how you grow.
That's a great image.
That's self-realization. That's how you grow. That's how you self-develop. You know, that's how you become self-empowered. Is you see, you do introspection work, you reflect, you submit, you open yourself up, be receptive. And then once you get that guidance, because you will get it, you know, once you get those downloads, once you get those guidance, once you get those aha moments, now what you gonna do with them? Just say aha, you know? Nah, it's aha now. Let's plant some seeds. And a lot of people feel like you gotta do a whole lot. It's really being, you know? It's really looking at how are you being, you know? And then there may be some doing, like I need to meditate more, but I'd rather you become meditative than meditate more. You know, I'm really right now in the ministry, I got a lot of focus on shifting from the doing so much and be, you know, learning what being is instead of always, because, you know, we have been conditioned to be doers, fixers, you know, all of that. And, you know, we're far away sometimes from being. Yeah,
real talk. I remember I was looking at a throwback of a shirt I wore, and I love the brother who made it, and I love the shirt, but it said "Make It Happen." And I don't really have the appetite to wear that shirt too much, at least not in that context. That's my man Jolo. Shout out to Jolo Mike, one of the greatest chefs in the world in New York City, and they be calling Mr. Make It Happen. You know, hustle and grind, and let's get it. And that's not just Jolo. That's just how our generation saw at the end of the Piscean age. You know what I mean? At the end of that Earth age, where it's just like, yo, we gotta do it. We gotta get up, get out, and get something.
Yeah.
You know, as Goody said, and it all makes sense.
Definitely.
And
it has its time and place.
Right. And the time and place now is to
allow
and receive.
Allow it to happen.
But that just sounds like
align with it and allow it to happen.
I want to go down a rabbit hole. Because
we were talking about the full moon.
Yeah, we're moving down it, but just I want to stick a pin in it. I'll take some notes because I want you to kind of share with us about that before you leave, you know, in terms of just relaxing and receiving and how saying allow is not a mind. We use the word trick. We're not psyching ourselves out and saying, oh boy, now we just going to say we're going to allow, right? We got all this stuff going on and I got these muscles, so I'm just going to allow it instead of going out and do it.
I like to say, where that's taken you though? Where has that taken you and the generations before you? Well, being stuck in the make it happen mode. I can tell you, breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, stress, the imbalances in the home life because you hustling. How I gotta hustle. Well, I gotta hustle. So she just gotta understand, or he just gotta understand, and all that kind of stuff. When you allow things, when you're led by spirit, it doesn't take away the amount of work that you may have to do, but it aligns it. So now,
so you're not swimming upstream. Because I was just about to interview
and messing things on the way.
I was just about to tell you, you're gonna have to.
I'm an entrepreneur.
You're gonna have to book
entrepreneur.
a new interview with us because you just stepped on a whole lot of toes there. Generations and generations said, well, that's the way we got over.
Okay. And now it's time for some renewal. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. Right. It's about time for us to experience our birthright, to be vibrant, wealthy, long-standing beings. Isn't it about that time?
It's about that time.
Or we can just accept. Do you know what age our loved ones are transitioning? Very young, very, very young. From stress levels,
from making it happen,
from hustling, and the people who people revere, find successful, who people low key, even if they got their fist up in the air, you low key looking at that man that has the 2-3 houses and the nice cars and the living his life. Yeah, if you sit down with him, he'll tell you it's a big part of it is allowing. You just sit down with any of them. They may say it in different ways. Well, when I picked up meditation, this helped. When I started doing yoga, this helped. When I stopped trying to control everything, this helped. You'll hear it from them. You'll hear it now if you do the research on them.
I was listening to Florence Scovel-Shinn one time as we get forward into the full moon. She's saying that there's nothing in the world that can stand in front of a non-resistant man or woman.
At all.
That's be like Bruce Lee, the great champion. This is not somebody who is a slouch.
But listen, this conversation, but this conversation goes over your head if you don't truly believe in divinity. We having divine conversation right now.
So let's even just talk about let me challenge that. Let me challenge that respectfully. Even if you just into science, you can look at principles of nature.
But if you looking at it and holding on it in an egoic way, it's still going over your head.
Okay, so like how water cuts through a rock. How is that going over somebody?
Someone who is super scientific will be more focused on the how and the why than the essence of it.
I got you.
The divinity is understanding and accepting, allowing, honoring, giving thanks for the essence of seeing that. And it's not this mystical, magical thing. It's the fact that, yes, I can explain the how, the why, and all this kind of stuff. But overall, the whole point, prayerfully, in getting to understand the how and the why and the what, is to acknowledge that this is a reality. This is a part of my reality. And not just in nature. Like, I can see that in me. And maybe sit in your divine mind and realize, well, how is this a reflection in some of the things I've seen in my life? And what is that? So that now you start to connect now with these great divine things and prayerfully get to the space where you begin to see that it's all one. There's no separation, as somebody said on your page. There's no separation. There's no separation. And that's what I meant by, this conversation is going over the heads of those who struggle with the separation piece. Because you become more and more skilled at letting go when you begin to realize the non-separation, the oneness.
And I'm taking notes because I'm hearing some key words in the how-to. I'm hearing some key words, and I'm going to review them in a little while. But you said start with consulting. And not just consulting, but consulting the divine. Yeah. And then later on, you're talking about reflecting now. So having an honest reflection. Mm-hmm. So once we say, okay, I consult this, and let me see what, and maybe along the way, the word, I didn't hear the word, but the word observation, because we're talking about the lunar cycles. Mm-hmm. So observe and relate. Yeah. Are those words that would be appropriate? Observe and relate what the seasons are saying to you. Mm-hmm. And then now that you got the essence of what the season is saying, reflect how this works in my life. Yes. Hey,
that's all.
You're a good listener today.
And giving thanks. You know what that is? Taking the spook out of spirituality. That's what that is. That was my tagline for a long time. Taking the spook out of spirituality. Spirituality is merely being you as a spiritual being. It is being you as a spiritual being. So we call spiritual practices are the practices that you adopt so that you can be, acknowledge, remember, and be a spiritual being, which you already are. But you move away from being that when you start separating yourself, when you start getting caught up in ego, when you, it's still you. All those things that you take on, which we give thanks for the full moon because it's time to sit back and say, okay, what do I have attached to my being that is not in alignment with my divinity? That's a beautiful thing to do during the full moon. No matter what religion you are, no matter what color you are, no matter what gender, it don't matter. Around the full moon, when the moon starts getting big in the sky, as a matter of fact, when it's big and full in the sky, and when it's disappearing in the sky, those two times, when it's big and full in the sky, and when it's disappearing in the sky, during those periods, ask yourself, look at your life, every area of your life. Are there any things that I need to let go of, purify out my life, move away from, decrease, refine? Are there any of those things that I need to do? And then make a plan on how you're going to do it. And then begin to do it. Begin to do it with no judgment. No strictures are good, but don't, just start doing it. Don't think about whether you tried it before and it failed. It don't matter because now it's a full moon. Energetically, because you are doing this during this time, you are being supported, as I would say, by the universe or by the cosmos. You're being supported. And so that is the type of, those are the type of things that we do around the full moon. I host a meditation around that time. And during that meditation, we tend to do journaling, or I give a writing prompt. And if we don't do it during the session, then I just give the assignment for them to do that evening. And then for the next 3 days, because the full moon energy is present 3 days before on the full moon and 3 days after. So you got about a 7-day period. Listen to the numerology of 7. I mean, we can go deep in that. You got 7-day period. Then you got the full moon energy. It's the prime time. And so when I'm saying these things, I'm not saying it to be mystical and it's a prime time. I'm saying this is reality. This is what we're working with. And here's the thing. If you're not in tune, if you decide, I ain't got time for all of that. You're not in tune. Okay. All right. And so you decide to maybe put some new things in motion. You decide to maybe start moving. You start trying to make some things happen, or you trying to manifest something, or move too fast. Basically, it's not necessarily the right time or the divine time for you to do that. And so you're basically going upstream. You're going upstream. Like you're going against the current. Why not flow with the current? That's the whole premises around living intentionally. Flow with the current. Why would you go against the current? You know, unless you just looking to build some muscle, which that's cool. Okay, you can go ahead and build some muscle because you will, because you're gonna get that struggle, and prayerfully you have the tools to fight that struggle. Right. You know, but
it's unnecessary. It's
I won't say it's unnecessary because sometimes, guess what? People need to learn.
I'll say
you got a grandchild. We may say you going through this unnecessarily, but he need to learn it that way.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's still, and so that's the beauty. I mean, I'm glad you brought up that point because there's always the optimal way, right. And there's also the power and the reality of the grace of the Almighty that love humanity more than any parent could even fathom loving their children. So even though you might not take it the optimal way, just like the GPS, which I've heard you use an analogy.
Yes.
It's still going to take you home.
It's going to take you home.
You're going to
get
home.
There. Yeah.
We just would rather take the shortest way. Not even the short
I would rather. I've gotten to a place where, but see, it goes back to that humility that we talked about at the beginning. In order to get to a place where you can emphatically say, I'd rather just follow the GPS, right. You got to lower yourself a little bit.
And you also have to have gone where you didn't follow the
GPS.
GPS.
Where you're going against the current. That's why I said the necessary. It may be necessary for you to get to that place where you humble yourself, right. You know.
Not only that, but you got off the track, you didn't follow the GPS, and then you lost the signal. Then you lost the battery power, and you was in the valley listening to wolves howl all night in your cold car. This is a real story. This is not I'm talking about real story here. We're talking to Queen Yenn, y'all. Yenenga Adanya, founder of Oyun Ministries. The backdrop, for those of you joining us live, is the Oyun Marketplace located at 3353 Washington Road in East Point, Georgia. On Wednesdays and Thursdays during the autumn, we're open from 11 to 4. And, of course, on Saturdays, 11 to 6 are the hours. And we're just talking about life. Queen Yenn, before we get off that moon, this is WRFG Atlanta, of course, 89.3 on the FM dial. We can't never really get off the moon, but before we wrap up and get to the kind of a recap of what we've spoken about. So just to check for overstanding, you first located us in the season.
Yes,
which
fall.
is the fall.
A lot of it's a lot of shedding, fall, keywords. I like to give keywords, the teacher in me. Mm-hmm. Shedding, hermit, people start to kind of go inside, withdraw, go inside. It's a lot of reflection, a lot of renewal, a lot of rebirthing, a lot of, it's that kind of theme during the fall. It would be a good time for you to do that introspection work, to renew. You end up with retrogrades throughout the year, but you deal with a retrograde in the fall. You deal with eclipses, those type of things. All of that is rebirth and renewal. So that's the fall. So
that's the big temperature in the atmosphere, regardless of what the lunar cycle is.
Right.
It's renewal, rebirth, reflection, into the cave hermit time, period.
Yeah, and again, I do executive coaching, so I work with different businesses, teaching the spiritual side of business, and you tend to not do anything brand new in the fall. Right. You're planning brand new in the previous in the winter, and you put the plans out, and then like in the school system, they may roll it out, but it's not in the fall; it's in the summer. They're rolling it out in June, July to the teachers. But if you even look at companies, or you may not want to do it during that time. You may look at some of your systems you already have set up and see, how can I renew them? How can I rekindle them? How can I, those type of things you want to do during that time, energetically. And so it's the same thing with our lives. You may not want to necessarily adopt something super new, but you can refine somewhere maybe, or rebirth, or, those type of things. Renewal, is different from new, renewal, renew some of the things that are you.
Which is kind of like the Mercury retrograde,
right.
Mercury Sankofa energy.
Right.
There's always so much to do that has been put to the side or put on the back burner, that's a time to really revisit and revise all of that. Yeah. And
mostly it's those things you keep ignoring. That's the thing. Stop ignoring it. This is the time now where now you got time. You got time today. So with that being said, that's the fall. So now you got the full moon. So the full moon, no matter what season, is good for, as people would say it, they say it like releasing those things that no longer serve you, or letting go, or forgiving, or just doing that self-work to kind of release, heal. Full moon. And then the new moon is planting seeds. So, and planting seeds, doing your vision boarding, setting intentions. And let me go a little bit more divine and speak on God level. On the new moon, you remember. Remember God, remember your divinity on the new moon. In just remembrance, you're planting the greatest seeds. In just remembering God, you plant the greatest seed.
So what does remembering God look like?
Remembering that you're a divine being. Remember that you're not your past. You're not your fears. You're not this. This is not you at your very being. You are a divine being. You want me to make it practical? Because I know you like for me to go down to speak to in
second grade level.
The fact that you started as what? Come on, let's get the science. So now you are a big, strong man or woman. Do I need to say more?
The fact that big old oak tree.
No. Let's stay with the body. The fact that if you cut your arm, whether you need stitches or not, I done had a wound where I didn't get stitches and that mug healed up. Maybe if I would have got stitches, it would have been a little bit better. But we didn't get them. So, but guess what it did? It closed up. You ever seen an aloe plant? Does the same thing. Right. You cut it, you break it off. By the time you come back the next day, it done closed up. Right. And that tells you, guess what that tells you? The nature is like if you take that aloe plant and you put it on a wound, guess what may happen to that wound it's no more. These are not good.
The womb is closing up.
The womb start closing up. You are a divine being. You're connected.
So like as you say,
remembering that.
Just to remember, and then to illustrate that, to check for understanding, what you're saying that when you use those examples, you're basically saying that healing is part of your natural process.
Absolutely.
So even if there is a breach, even if there's a so-called mistake, even if there's a laceration,
wholeness is
naturally wholeness.
Yes,
the whole everything is working
healing,
back towards wholeness.
Always,
all the time.
That is the nature of your being.
So just to sit with that is a powerful meditation.
And that's what I'm saying. That's on the new moon. That could be a remembrance. That's what I mean by you asked me what's remembrance. Having those contemplations. Having those thoughts, remembering that, taking a moment to remember that. That's what I mean on new moon. And then on full moon, releasing those things that ego has put a blockage or haze over that divinity. Just remembering things. Realizing things in your life. Maybe it's you are impressed by others too much. Maybe it's that you seek validation too much. Maybe whatever it is. And usually you can do a lot of good work when you're working with your natal chart in that area. Because the natal chart kind of will highlight what are some of those tendencies that get in the way of your divinity, of you staying connected and remembering your connectivity to your divinity. The natal chart will bring that out. Now, I don't know if people explain it like that. They look at it, this is bad thing about the Aries. This is a bad thing. It's no good and bad. Right. It's just that these are tendencies that could cause you to feel a separation. Right. So let's refine it.
I'm glad you said it like that, because this is part of the process that we started off in terms of the wider umbrella under which we speak today about creating new tradition, which includes creating new narratives, telling new stories. Definitely. Right? Because most
that's a big part of tradition.
Huge part.
Yeah. And so that's the full moon. The full moon this month during the fall Definitely rejuvenation. Beautiful thing I don't want to miss saying is this full moon is also accompanied by an eclipse. And a lot of people get excited about eclipse, and some people may wonder what's the big deal about an eclipse. Well, I read in an article, it used these words. It said it's like the universe is giving you a hand. You know, it's like giving you that little boost. You know, that little boost that, you know, you get on the swing, or, you know, that $20,000 check that you get as seed money that can help you to, you know, get it going, those type of things. That's what eclipse do when it comes to rebirthing and renewing and cleansing. And so I've been saying, it's been, you know, coming from me during this period as I, you know, do the video or I do the full moon and new moon guidance every month. The time is now for those things that you feel like they have been stuck. You haven't really seen no movement in them. Like you've been trying to release it. You've been saying you want to release it and you just can't quite get past it. This is a beautiful time for you to, at the very least, sit with it and make some intentions to release those things. This is a good time for that,
because there's a cosmic energy,
yes,
that is assisting you in that.
Yes.
And I think even for the so-called uninitiated, everyone can understand cosmic energy in terms of there's some times where everybody feel kind of, whether it's stress or there might be a place that you go to where you feel a release of that stress all of a sudden, just because of the atmosphere, just because of the physical atmosphere and the cosmic energy.
Like Oyun Marketplace.
To do. Anytime you go to somewhere, I mean, real talk, anytime you go somewhere where it's carefully, where that feng shui is proper, then you feel different. And so imagine the fact that there is an energy beneath all of that is in the universe, that's literally in the air. And, and you ain't got to go outside in the fresh air, so to speak. You know?
But guess what you got to do? You got to lower yourself. You got to, like, it's no way around it. It's not a way around that part. You know, you will see the success that you desire.
So when you say lower yourself, what you mean by that? Because that may sound like literally like, what you mean? Like
give thanks for you adamantly being that person to raise that, because there is that a part of the Western, this is my opinion, my humble opinion, a part of Western conditioning makes it where our ego does that a lot, you know, where it's like almost rebel against stuff like humble, lower, because of trauma. Right. It's because of trauma. Because if you go to places, I romanticize as I think about this, but if you go to places that are kind of like very spiritual at core, humility is a thread of their life, of their thinking, you know. It's like I was learning Yoruba, and a part of the language, within the language and culture and customs, is humility.
Right. So because
you're literally lowering yourself.
Because we're not in that, and then we speak in the English language, so lower
sound
has a connotation of degrade.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is our time to step up.
Yes.
This is our time to step up. So, you know, in Islam, for instance, there's a one part of the 5 stages of the salat. There's more than 5, you know, in terms of the different postures, for lack of a better word. When you're on your knees, it's called Sajdah. And it's always been taught that is when you're on your throne. But again, if you look at it from the street level, like on my knees, that means I'm such and such played me.
Well, look, if
somebody just sunned me.
If you look at Matthew, Matthew chapter 5, Christianity. Matthew chapter 5 is something called the Beatitudes.
Yes.
You would throw the whole book away as soon as you read it.
Right. The Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are ye. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth.
Oh, excuse me.
Or what about the one that was I think the last one is something like the persecute.
Blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are those who revile, you know, blessed are those who are reviled and persecuted for righteousness' sake. Rejoice and be glad. Y'all know what my background was.
Oh, man. Throw the whole Bible.
Rejoice and be glad, for
throw it away.
For great is your reward. And you're like, that sounds like Martin Luther King looked to us when we were 16 and eyes on the prize.
Hey, listen.
Like, what, you let the dogs bite you and you ain't swing back? Like, you ain't had no AKs in the bush? So
again, I understand why we'll say that. Because we were taught the Bible for real.
Right.
we were taught the Bible from a quite wicked and terribly flawed way, I'll say, because the intention was never, I should say, to be for liberation. It was to enslave. And so,
but that don't mean the Bible wasn't at all.
No.
And
it's just you don't know what.
And that's what we're saying at the essence, just to bring the full circle. We're talking about energy, which is universal energy that's manifest in different ways. And then we're talking about how people who realize the energy, what they would call the 10%, use that. Use that for deleterious effect. However, that don't stop the fact that energy was there for humanity to flourish with.
Is like tradition.
So the whole point there, that we
was just talking about traditions in the beginning. It's the same thing. It's not like there ain't no goodness out of it. But you do have to know how to read it. You have to know what it's talking about, because it's not talking about anything that you think it's talking about. The Bible is definitely a book that teaches you how to master the mind, how to lower yourself and use it as a tool for as a instructional manual on how to be your divine being, how to exercise your divinity, how to exercise, I should say that. I shouldn't say be, because you are divine being, but we tend to not exercise it because we don't lower ourselves, because we think that the ego, that lower self, I call it lower self, but I'm not saying bad or good. Notice that. I'm saying just the lower self. We don't necessarily allow the higher self, because we got to stand up for ourselves, because we got to control things, because we scared things going to fall apart, because if we don't do it, and we've been trained to do that in the school system and in religion and everything, we've been trained to do that. So it's an understanding of that. But you asked me, what do I mean by lower yourself? I'm just saying, like, it's so, that's a kind of a complex question, but I am saying, do the work to govern the ego. Do the work to govern the ego.
That's clear.
Do the work to govern the ego. And, that takes work. That's clear. It takes work. And the part of that work is seeking guidance, slowing the mind down, the breath work, time in nature, time in stillness, time in quiet, time in prayer, time in meditation, using affirmations. All it's work, to do that. It's not just a matter of, just like confining the mind, I'm just not gonna listen to my mind. No, like, just do the work, because your mind is a beautiful tool as well. It's a blessing. Give thanks. You just gotta refine the mind, refine it, because it's been conditioned in a certain kind of way, especially in I would say the Western world, especially in the Western world. So, give thanks for this full moon and eclipse. I think a lot of people have been doing a lot of self work since the pandemic happened, because we've had time to sit down, and I'm saying that work continues, and not just because of pandemic, because this is an age of change. Nothing is the same. Nothing is the same. It's not gonna be the same. And so we will be challenged. There will be a lot of purification. And so, get ready, get your tools together, get yourself together, because if you're stuck in ego, if you're stuck in making things happen, or trying to control things, or stuck in regret, or stuck in sadness, or stuck in laziness, or stuck in procrastination, then when that purification, those times of purification come, you could be weak. You could be very weak. And so, we have an opportunity to be strong and shine through those times, like, be mighty, but if not, if we maybe don't use these times that are presented to us naturally, then we could be weak. Right.
We're listening to the voice of Queen Yenn, y'all. And as we wrap up, Queen Yenn, I just want to do some review. I took some notes, but they're not in front of me, so I'm just that's really going to test me in terms of my my listening today. One of the things that you mentioned a lot about, my final question before I just review, about releasing things that no longer serve us. And a lot of times that looks like, in a world that is very tight-knit, very, like social media and everything is a perfect example of how this world is in terms of very sense oriented, and very much so. Therefore, people begin to feed off each other, almost like vampires. Mm-hmm. So that looks like friendships and relationships and businesses and all kind of stuff sometimes falling apart, so to speak. Now, what I want to ask is about. I want to ask you to kind of bring some clarity to that, and the clarity is, I'm using as a point. I'm using as a point of reference. The philosopher Muji, who one time said, if it's good for you, it won't be bad for somebody else. And to tie that into what we were talking about, even as we engage our families, don't be scared of the shakeup. So there's a distinction between a shakeup, what might be uncomfortable for someone, and bad for someone. Like there's a universal order at play. What I get from that, and I want to ask you if you agree with that or how you would interpret that. What I get from that is that as we go through these different phases of our self-work, as we go through our reflection after consulting the divine and observing and relating and all of that, and we get these messages, if it's something that's good for you, it won't be bad for nobody else. And so, but good and bad, I know you kind of shy away from those words, but let's just translate the good and the bad to, if it's beneficial for you, it won't be detrimental for someone else.
That definitely could be hard for many to hear. But as I think about that, I think about in a lot of my coaching sessions, it is clear what an individual needs to do to find balance. But a lot of times their hesitancy in doing that is because they feel like it will hurt somebody else, or they feel like, other people won't like it. And sometimes it's that very, very, I would say move away from that. And that's worrying about what people think. It's deeper than that. They really feel like if I do that, it will harm someone else. And it may. That's for them. I hope this don't sound too rough. They got to work with that. They have to work with that.
But will it really harm them? That's what I'm getting at.
Well, I shy, like you said, I shy away from the good and the bad. Like I don't see anything as that. I see it all as it all is a part of the process. Like when you upheaval your beds outside, you tear it all up, double dig them up, and somebody may look, oh my God, you're harming the bed. No, it's necessary for me to uproot that. That's like the Oya energy, So some people shy away from the Oya energy. Oh Lord, don't call Oya, don't call Eshu, don't call them. But how are we going to grow in life? How are we going to continue? Every process of growth in life has what we consider pain. Right. From birthing a baby to, the seed popping out the shell to, everything, all of it. So will it harm them? Like what is this harm? Like they gonna die? Like, I don't know what, it may to as a perception to them be a harm to them. Like many times when relationships fizzle out, one person may say, you rejected me, and so now you've made me distrustful. You've made me not want to be in relationships. So you could say, okay, you experienced a level of trauma from the other person, but that's still something they got to work on, because really it wasn't the person that made them feel that way. They triggered that vibration in you that you are going to have to work on, because you have to depend on something more eternal than that, than a person, than a relationship. So,
but that's a perfect example. That what I would say, that's no harm. That might be a shake-up. That might be uncomfortable. But on the Shamba page today, there's a post from our good brother Dr. B. Sirius, who we all know at WRFG. And basically he was saying you are a living crystal. And he went step by step in illustrating how crystals are formed and that they illuminate because of pressure. We know this about diamonds and all this kind of stuff, right? Or how gold is made into the fire. So there is a certain kind of pressure that is different than suffering, different than what you're talking about, how our parents
it's a challenge.
got
That's
into
why I like
the
to use
whole
challenge instead of
making it happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a certain pressure that exists in the universe that is absolutely beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
So that's different. You don't, and we all know you don't grow in your comfort zone. That's just
right.
reality. So
that's the last beatitude, actually. Because the persecuted, blessed are the persecuted. I think.
Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake.
And
this is the kingdom.
That ego gonna persecute you.
Right.
It's gonna do it. But if you keep, striving to stay in your divine mind, affirm the truth about your divinity, and that kind of thing, that purification, you'll start to see it working. You'll start to see your positive thinking working. You'll start to see your work around the new moon work. Your full moon work is working. You'll start seeing it work. But you got to push through that ego that make you say, oh, that's fluff. Or, well, they ain't going to give me no money. And, I hear it all. You wouldn't believe what I hear from people coming up in here like, well, so that gemstone going to do this. And, it's like, I'm not even going to I will, but not in that. Not in that space. But right, you got to push past that, or push past the desire.
Because all of that is definitely something that with time. I think there's a proverb that says an old man sitting down, or sees more than a young man stand on the top of a tree. That's because time and cycles.
Yes.
Even Dr. B. Sears was saying today that indigenous people ask, "How many winters have you lived?" And winter representing the time of so-called death.
Exactly.
The time of lowering self. The time, you know what I mean? How many winters? Because that's what teaches me about how can I listen to you.
Absolutely.
And
for sure.
trust for what you're saying as something to be endured.
So we want to hide from the purification or run away from the thing, but you can only forge wisdom through that experience.
Yes, indeed.
I had to learn that. I won't say the hard way, but it was a challenge.
Indeed. So as we close, Queen Yenn, we're so grateful for you being here today. And I want to just go through and check for understanding. We talked about a couple things, and I want to simplify them in a language that my grandson and all his peers could understand, because they come in, as Harold Melvin say, they are the future. And they're born with some bright eyes and bushy tails. So we want to make sure that it's clear for them and for us as well, and for the child in us, really, honestly. So first, there's a premise that we have entertained today, that traditions, just like great cities, just like great empires, just like many different things that have popped up in this world and have ended up having, let's just say, a less than pleasant face, have been created out of energy vortices, natural pockets of energy that have potential in them for creation, to do so-called good or bad.
That's the 3-year-old version. I'm just trying to understand. I thought we was doing it for the 3-year-old. All right, let me do that's what you said. That's what you said.
You're right. So I'm gonna accept that challenge. That's beautiful.
There are some traditions we follow that, if you look at the history of it, you'll go, what in the world? Why am I celebrating this? Right. I don't agree with this. Right. Period. Yeah, period. Right. There's some traditions that's followed that if you look at the history of it, you'll be like, wow, this is sick.
And the other thing about it is that them same traditions, if we look deeper into it, we can see that they were
centered around some prime cosmic activity. Yes, absolutely. Right. And what I'm saying is that, yes, there may be some history around it where people have used it for a capitalistic or a deadly or a wicked, is for the lack of a better word, way. However, if the here and the now, those times are when your family get together, those times are, when it's some conditions that has been created that are different from the whole, that's in the whole year. Utilize those times. And you may go further and try to study and research the cosmic meaning behind these times, those dates that were chosen. But even if you don't do that,
just know that your opportune time exists right now in your hands.
Yes.
To be present, to
see that there's opportunity. It's common sense. You ain't got to know none of that to see that those when everybody get off. That's when all the cousins come together. That's when every level of generation, young, middle age, older, elder, all of them have an opportunity to come together. Okay, you see that. That's simple. You don't have to know cosmic activity for that. That's simple. Now, what can I do with this time? Being more intentional. What can I do with this time? Now, that becomes your tradition. Around Thanksgiving, we all write a little note. We all ask our aunties and uncles questions. We all record the elders. We all, those type of things, like you cut it off. Those type of things. But that's creating your own traditions or refining. Just refining your traditions to, in all, I'm just proposing that we be a little bit more intentional. That's my whole message anyway. That's what I'm always, it just stopped. That's my whole thing about, life in general. The more intentional we are, the more fruit we gain from it. You're a farmer, the more intentional you are about your farm, you render better results, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and that's the same thing with the tradition. When we talk about farming, one of the things that we have, that nature, as you explained earlier, has given the whole creation an alley-oop or a hand with, is bringing families back to the land, or encouraging families to come back home, because part of the tradition in this country for the last 300 years has been agriculture being associated with deprivation and slavery, straight up, backbreaking work that is not productive to ourselves.
Well, guess what? Everything is changing now. Right. Because farmers, give thanks for the urban farmers, the what we call, what are the names for permaculturists, the agriculture, whatever the names are. We give thanks for their works, but mama was going to have her way to have that to happen anyway.
Absolutely.
Well, people was going to come back because everything come full circle. And so now we give thanks because now that it's come back, it's more, lighthearted. It's more, I want to do this, You don't have to go and ask people nowadays. Right. They want to come. They're excited. We see it all the time here at Shamba. Right. They're excited to come. Let's walk around, and it's something glorious to them. Right. And we may look down at, people may be scared to take their shoes off and all that, but guess what? They're here on the land. They may have never thought to take their shoes off, but now you see more people taking the shoes off, hugging trees, going out in nature, and all these different type of things. So it's happening naturally. I got to emphasize that, because whether you are paying attention or not and want to get with this whole, divine and meditation program, the change is now. And to me, it seems like there's a line being drawn very clearly on who is going to submit and who not. And those who are not, there has been, is currently, and will be some suffering. Because going against the current it creates challenge. Unless you're trying to, or unless you're trying to build a muscle. Okay, go for it. But many who are going through it ain't trying to build a muscle like that. But maybe it's just necessary for them to do so. But I look at things like, just to candidly speak, I'm careful around some of these topics, but people are being pushed to the limit right now. They're being pushed to see, are you going to lay down and take it? And for me, I'm like, what do you want to lay down and take? You want to lay down and take what man is saying they can promise you if you lay down and take it, or you want to lay down and take what God has promised you. And that's where you really get challenged on, what are your belief systems, period. And if you don't believe, okay, I send much light prayers to you, because I bear witness wholeheartedly, unapologetically, firmly. I bear witness that we are divine beings. And whether you want to call it God, Allah, Jah, whatever you want to call it, what I can tell you is it's something greater than what's happening right here in front of your face. It's something greater than what man can promise you. There's something greater. I can promise you that. And if you could just lower yourself a little bit, you can see that as a reflection everywhere, in nature, in the way children, we go from sperm to, as you said, sperm to grown folks, And so that's really where people are getting pushed to challenge. What do you believe? You know, shout out to
really, again, unapologetically to deal with semantics, not in a personal way, but just for the edification of the family. As you were saying earlier, now is the time to know. Belief is something a little, belief to me sounds like what you were mentioning earlier in terms of, instead of even just doing, let's just be.
It's on the way to knowing. Belief don't necessarily guarantee you're going to act on it.
Right.
Knowing is when you have acted on it.
Right.
You stood on that belief,
and
now
you got some inspiration.
You got to know.
Yeah,
you got to know. You looked at. I see it. I know it to be true. I'm telling you.
Because you done planted. You done heard some people talking about planting all the time, but now you put a seed.
I done put a seed. I done nurtured this house plant. I done built that garden. I did it. I did it. I meditated every day and my life changed. Yeah. I did it. You can believe that it will. I can imagine it will. I believe that it will. But getting to know, and people are being pushed to do that. So it's and some are saying, well, let me just go ahead, and comply and hope for the best. And I've sent prayers out to everyone who have been pushed that far and, complied and may be experiencing some level of struggle. I put prayers out and I pray. And again, that destination in that navigation system, whether you choose to not follow it, you still gonna end up at a destination. You still gonna end up at your destination.
Period.
And so we're not saying it's wrong. I never say anything is wrong. It's just that
we're looking for the optimal life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's time.
For good life. Yeah.
Because the beautiful thing is, it's time. It's just gonna take a little bit of humility, humbling yourself, and that could mean being courageous and all those type of things. But the time is prime now for you to experience the very best of life, and many are. Many are experiencing way more peace, way more prosperity, way more than they ever in their life. I'm talking about best of times.
Absolutely.
Than they ever experienced in their life.
I bear witness.
Yeah. I bear witness a lot, many. So we give thanks. Yeah. I'm just, this word is for one who may be teetering, taking that leap or, moving on that belief or that faith.
True. So to seal up, just on the doing part, on the how-to part, we talked about the background. Of course, there's no separation because you synergize that with even what to do with it. Now, on a level of going into this full moon, you said that the full moon is a time of release, and also, especially in the fall, even though the fall is a time of release in general, the full moon is really a time of release. So we have an eclipse. So even reflecting on the lessons and planting those as seeds, because the eclipse energy is giving us an extra hand. So for instance, if I'm saying to myself as a farmer that, boy, you have to be more intentional about how you companion your plants, because look what happened in June and July when a lot of rain came and it just kind of knocked you out the box. Then now the seed would be for me to say, well, embrace some lesson, embrace some class maybe, or do some more research on what good companion planting is all about. So that now as I go into the winter solstice and I get my crop plant all the way ready, I'm lit and I'm ready for the next season. That's a good example.
And I love the way that example, because it shows you that releasing also comes with, it's not just letting go, but it's also following now the divine guidance that come with that.
As you said, because the aha moment, you don't say aha and just leave it alone, right?
So,
so
I released this. Okay, so then what? The reason why it may keep coming up, because you didn't replace that with affirmation, or you didn't replace that with, what are you going to do because it may have its residue. It may, it may have whatever. How do you replenish, I guess, how do you replenish?
Oyun Marketplace, right behind me here, I see some sage, some white sage, which is good for purification. In the commercial world, it would be something like Lysol or something, you know what I mean? But I also see
Palo Santo,
and decor and all this kind of stuff, which is about adding a sweetness to it and it's almost like you got the antibiotics and then you got the probiotics, and this is how life goes.
Renewal. That's why I said the key words for full moon and eclipse: release, renew, rejuvenate. All of those come with releasing. Right. Releasing is rejuvenating. It's letting it go so it can expand. Letting it go so it can grow. Purification is growth. Right. We think that it's death, but death is a flawed concept to even keep in mind. It's all going towards, it's like the trees release the leaves so that it can go and decompose and expand into soil again, so that the seeds can be planted, the new seeds can be planted in fertile ground. So it's like, that's what release is about. Don't just drop the leaves down and they just go away, no.
It's a comma instead of a period.
Right.
It's a comma. As an English teacher, it's a comma, and it makes a huge, big difference, right? Even if you read a sentence and there's a period there instead of a comma.
I release these things that no longer serve me, and I affirm those things that do. I welcome those things that do in my life. So that's what this full moon and eclipse is all about. I do have more information about the fall. This full moon and the eclipse on my YouTube channel. So I'm Queen Yenn. If you put in Queen Yenn, you'll get all of my social media most likely. So I post that every month. Every new moon, every full moon, I just post a little bit of, chat about the energy, how we could possibly optimize this energy. And then the meditation is Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time online, which is beautiful. You can do it from the comfort of your home. It's widely attended, and for those who can't attend live, they get the replay. So a large percentage of people who register do indulge in the replay because they can't attend live. But I've gotten nothing but good feedback about the replay. It's like they say, they really enjoy that as well. So if you cannot attend the live, you do get a replay if you register. But that's Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, Queen Yenn, Queen Yenn. If it's on my Instagram in the caption, it's also on my Eventbrite, Queen Yenn.
So one more thing, like I was going through my thing, and I know you're probably pressed for time right now, but in the doing part with the family, the beautiful sequence that you offered, I want to make sure that I'm repeating this correctly. So for those who have been driving and missed part of it, are able to take some really copious notes, or at least some real tangible steps. The first thing is, now that we have this opportunity, and I know that something needs to change, my heart is saying that there's something that we can upgrade as a family with, then here we come. First, I want to seek divine guidance on how to approach it. First of all, seek divine guidance.
And I tend to not tell people how to do that. No. I can tell you how I do it. Yeah. What I do is, during my prayer and meditation time in the mornings, every day, I start with remembering my divinity, remembering God. And then I always, every day, ask myself, is there anything on my heart or mind that I need to get some affirmation on, or some guidance around? And I just write it down, or I'll just say it without searching for the answer or waiting on the answer. I just put it out there, and then I, affirm the reality of God when it comes to maybe those kind of areas. Meaning, like, if it's a family and you got a lot of family strife or whatever, and that's weighing on my heart, I affirm that nothing is stuck. Everything is always moving and reaching towards wholeness. I start to affirm truths, basically. I just start affirming truth, and I leave it. And by the time I finish my prayer and meditation time and my study time, generally that guidance comes, It may come through reading something, just vibing out, a card pull, or it'll come eventually, or it'll just say, well, be still. The answer will come, But I made the intention. I set the intention to get some kind of guidance on it. Long as the intention is set, that's the seed planted.
There's a seed
and
planted.
So something will come.
Right.
Something will be shown to you.
There's going to be some germination.
Yeah, something will come. It will, truly. You know, and that's seeking guidance. If you want me to like put it out in a
absolutely.
kind of, how do you do that?
Yeah, and seeking guidance, and after you seek guidance and the guidance comes, then it's also part of the reflection and the reflecting. Before we even get to reflecting, you just start to observe. You kind of juxtapose, well, where am I in the season? What's the temperature calling for? What's the season calling for? So observing the season around us, and then also
and within us,
relating, definitely within us, and relating to that season. So how are these things? You asked a great question, which I think is a good model we can all follow. Well, what is one thing out of the many that's going to come to your mind most likely? What is one thing that just looking outside that this autumn tells me? Or what is one thing that this looking at this full moon tells me about nature, about life? A real clear, persistent, consistent lesson. And then after that, well, what does this say to me about my life? How do I relate to that in my life? How do I relate to the leaves that were once shiny?
Or even in this specific situation. You could use that in this specific situation. Boom. Okay, what would a tree tell me? How would a tree tell me to behave in this situation? Right. Or how to deal with this situation? Yeah. And it may sound lofty at first, but once you really start connecting and really quiet the mind and center the mind and just allow, it'll start coming to you.
Yeah, it's very practical.
Something told me to one day study trees. Mm-hmm. I started studying it and learned so much about the roots, and then it sparked me to, well, what do they call barren land, and why do they call it barren? And I started, it just really unfolded into everything. And then as I read, I would apply it to me. Okay, well, what is that reality about barren in my life? You know, that, and how does that, what are the nutrients? When they say, or I started studying the trees by the rivers of water, because I hear that all the time. Like, okay, so what's significant about that? Let me read about let me read about the trees that's planted by rivers. Let me see what that means. What are they saying? And it teaches you a lot. I can't really explain to you, but it really does, and it helps you to, like, if you could really do that introspection to apply it to yourself,
absolutely.
Then the tree become your brother. The tree become your teacher.
Absolutely.
You become the student of the tree.
Because nature is a classroom. Yeah. As we say, life is a farm. Well, thank you, Queen Yenn, for the time, and thank you again for showing up in the moment, and honoring your gift, and honoring your ancestral lineage, your gift, and establishing the ministry that family can benefit from. Again, Queen Yenn can be heard even 2 hours from now on this same radio station, on the Bridge Talk Radio, for students and teachers and those of us who love them, and parents. I forgot the parents. Don't forget the parents.
Parents, teachers, and students.
Parents, teachers, and students, and those of us who love them, right? And so this is WRFG Atlanta. We give thanks for those of y'all been joining us online. Go ahead. We'll save this recording, and it'll be on our timeline. This is the Ancestral Rock, and we give thanks for the opportunity to be standing on the Ancestral Rock, which means we're standing, sitting, lounging, dancing, jumping from, as a stepping stone, a great deposit of DNA, a DNA which has memory, a DNA which has memory from experience, and as we know, muscle has memory. So we have not had the dictate. We've not come here with the necessity to do anything new under the sun. It's all been done for us already. Peace and blessings, y'all.